Wellesley. And welcome to the Jimmy Daytona Show. This afternoon, I got my friend Dana Bullister, who has worked on some technical endeavors, has run a campaign for Cambridge City Council, and is now starting her PhD. She has also been educated at Wellesley College and Northeastern University. I'm very intrigued by her insights on how to efficiently manage local government, how to bring a data-driven, people-centered ethos to government at large, and I'm delighted to have her on the show. Welcome, Dana.
Thank you. A pleasure to be here.
So I'm going to start off with what endeavors are you up to these days or most recently, and what makes you passionate about them?
Sure. So most recently, I've been involved with contributing to a company called ClearGov, which is a wonderful organization that is building lots of tools that help better enable budget management, budget creating, and also budget transparency to better enable citizens of local governments to see what's going on with their money, and to also better engage at the local level, which speaks very strongly to me, someone who believes that citizens should be very much engaged and very much informed about local government. So I'm actually moving from doing that to pursuing a PhD at Northeastern University in design, interdisciplinary design and media, but something that I hope to tie to designing better tools for civic engagement and transparency. Yeah.
Well, that's wonderful. What compelled you to go the PhD route, and what are you hoping to get out of life or personally, professionally by doing so?
That's a great question. I think I really want to explore a topic very deeply, and I want to give myself permission and resources to do that. So I've spent a lot of my time so far jumping between research, academics, thinking about things, exploring different ideas, and being in industry. And that's been pretty much the last few years. And I enjoy both because ultimately for me, I believe fundamentally things to me that are important because they make an actual impact on the world. That's what lights my fire. However, to do that, I think that theory, that maturing ideas, that experimentation, and allowing exploration is the foundation for doing that, especially when it comes to topics as nuanced as transparency and civic empowerment. I think we have some answers we haven't yet found, and I want to find them. More importantly, I want them to really effectively impact some people at the local level and possibly local levels elsewhere.
Wow, that's wonderful. Having read about your ethos on civic engagement, you contrast people going to city council meetings and giving their 2 cents at the microphone versus people who don't have time to do so, and just how to get how to gauge their opinions and how to get them more involved in city government. What are some of your ideas in that regard?
Sure. So to give some context here, there are a lot of very important issues at the local level, especially where I live here in Cambridge. And a lot of people talk about very important issues like housing affordability, like equity in terms of transportation, access to these physical resources, and all of these things are really important. My belief and what I expressed in my campaign, and also what underlies my research, is that underlying all of these issues is one fundamental challenge that we have to address first. And to me, that challenge is equity in political influence. So back to what you said, you go to city council meetings and you hear a lot of very smart people express their opinion about different changes that need to be made. And that process is really important. But the people who express that opinion in forums, like council meetings, or even who make petitions, they aren't representative of the population at large. That's not to say that those channels are not important. They are, and I believe they should stay accessible and available and used. However, I think that there may be better ways to gauge the silent people, the people who live here and the people who may have very real needs, but who don't have the ability, don't have the resources, they don't have the time, the effort, they're working parents, they are service workers, they might not be available at the times when city council meetings happen. They may not be literate at a high level. You know, there are so many things that provide barriers to being civically engaged. And that creates a system where people are not adequately or equitably represented in terms of influencing the political process. This impacts every single policy decision across all of the domains that are talked about at city council meetings. Of course, the other aspect of equity and political influence is money in politics, campaigning to donating to political campaigns. Fundamentally, I think that's wrong. Very wrong. I want to get rid of it. You know, I don't think it may necessarily be possible at the local level right here from positions such as the city council position, but I think that reducing it to any level will improve the system, because it's fundamentally inequitable to people who can't contribute at the same level, and it creates a system where politicians are constantly beholden to certain interests over others, and I think that's wrong. So to make a long story longer, that's what I believe, and that is what lights my fire again, in terms of most of what I do.
Man, I mean, isn't money speech? I mean, they, you know, these people got a right to pipe up about, you know, issues of the day. I mean, you know, you had a system where, you know, you couldn't, you know, put out a video about somebody within 60 days of election, and the Supreme Court shot it down in Citizens United. And obviously that's had a lot of consequences, both good and ill. I mean, there's a site that I read called the Conservative Treehouse that made sense of the Trump candidacy, presidency, and aftermath. And the guy who authors the site said, you know, yeah, maybe money is speech, but the net effect is it drowns out inconvenient voices on both the left and the right, and it just allows you know, the current ruling class to be that much more entrenched than otherwise would be the case. And you know, having read that site and having heard what you had to say recently, that definitely resonates. What are like some of your more you know, how would you have people fund their campaigns instead of the current way of doing things?
Honestly, I think almost any system is better than the system we have now. I think that if we do treat money as speech, then we believe it's okay that there are people who are ensconced in certain classes. And you know, the way the world is now, you have people who are born into a certain class, and life is a lot easier for them, not just because it's easy to stay in that advantaged position, but because they drown out everyone else. And that makes it so that policies are shaped for the most advantaged, and that creates a vicious cycle for everybody who's left out. Very virtuous cycle for those who are already doing well. So we can treat money as political speech if we're okay with that, and I'm not. So as I said, there are lots of different systems that I think would be better. And again, I'm not saying that all of these are necessarily implementable at the local level right now, given the current environment, the current laws that are in place, Citizens United, et cetera, right? But I mean, fundamentally, I do believe that we should have fully 100% public funding for elections, right? And so, yeah, there are certain details that need to be worked out. That'll take a while to talk about, but happy to do it. But I do believe they should be 100% publicly funded. simply because when I was running for office, one of the things that absolutely horrified me about the process, almost beyond anything else, was that I met so many inspiring people who would be great politicians, wonderful policymakers. They needed to be there, but they didn't even run because they believed it wasn't possible for them to be electable because they didn't have the funds or they didn't have the funded connections. That, for me, is dysfunctional. Okay, that's dysfunctional. Sure, you can say, oh, the most well-funded candidate doesn't always win, right? So that proves that money doesn't determine elections. No. This isn't about whether money determines elections. This is about whether money helps create a system that systematically filters out almost everybody but the wealthy or those who are either really well connected or very beholden to the wealthy. So I saw this firsthand at a local level, and that's really just scratching the surface of what fundamentally happens at every level across the nation. It's terrible, and it's the DNA root cause of a lot of dysfunction, right? And you can't address a lot of other issues till you really address that one.
Wow, thank you for your insights. I know that one of the things I was thinking about when I first met you, it's like, hey, politics is a toxic profession. You got a bright future ahead of you. Why do you need this aggravation?
Politics is a toxic profession. Well, guess what? If no one wants to clean up the mess, it's never going to get better. Ultimately, what I care about is making an impact on the world. And that sounds cheesy and everything, but it just is. So I want to create an impact. And I think that there's a lot of really challenging, but ultimately rewarding work to be done here, especially for people who weren't born into this field. And I know most of my connections before I decided to run for council, like almost none of them were even remotely related to politics, which is not necessarily a good or a bad thing. But when you look at the slate of people who tend to seek election, that's not true of most of them, for good reason, for kind of not good reason, but understandable reasons. But I do think that we need a bit more diversity of experience in politics. And I think it's a big problem. And I think that to address big thorny problems, you do need different perspectives, right? And so I think that there is a great opportunity to both introduce these diverse perspectives, which I would hope to do, and maybe hope to inspire other people to do as well. And I think that will contribute to our ability to make some substantial impact. And I do believe that a lot. We have to do things a bit differently. And we've really been doing some of the same things just because we have had some of the same perspectives.
Sir, you really described your love affair with Cambridge. What do you love about it most? And what are some of the sites around here that you like to go to? Like if somebody was like visiting Cambridge for the first time, like what sites would you recommend they see?
Oh, wow. That's a question close to my heart. I do love Cambridge. I remember when I first got to the city, I think I have always lived in the Boston area. I went to Wellesley for college and ended up spending time there, but also in Cambridge and doing a lot of, both social and kind of extracurricular. I was at MITSO, the MIT University Symphony Orchestra, MIT Symphony Orchestra, and I did ballroom dancing. Anyway, when I first got to Cambridge as a college student, I feel like I really experienced it. And to be honest, it was the first time that I truly felt like I was at home. A lot of people never really feel like they're at home. And I realized I was one of those people. But then I got here and I felt at home. Anyway, I love Cambridge for so many reasons. The top one is probably the community, people who are here. I love that there is so much brilliant diversity of different people, different ideas that they have. And there are just so many brilliant ideas here, and so many people who are each inspiring in their own way. And I'm not just talking about the people who are, students or professors or something like that. I think that there are many types of brilliance, and there are so many that are represented here. And I feel so lucky to be able to live in a place like this. Yeah, I remember taking a tour with different friends of different things that they do, just learning about their various pursuits. And it's one of these places where you hang out at a bar like this, you talk to someone, and you have approximately a 98% chance of being really foundationally inspired just by talking to the person. I mean, that 2% you'll be inspired too, but just not as fundamentally. but seriously, it's an inspiring place to live. I feel so lucky. The sights that people have to see here, there are just so many. I can't choose just a few.
I'll say what I've become smitten with over the years. Well, the two of us are a Cambridge brewer, and this triple Belgian is amazing. The Flower Child IPA is like one of the best beers, one of the best IPAs of all time. So I love coming here. I have a dear friend who went to Cornell, Tara. Anytime she comes into Boston, the two of us make a beeline to Toscanini's ice cream, and we have like their unique flavors, like burnt caramel. They have like a cardamom flavored thing. It's like one of the best ice creams of all time. I'm also into belly dance. There's a backstory behind that. They have nights in the Middle East. Get to see that. Asgard's really cool. I become a Liverpool fan thanks to my cousin Shane in the last couple of years. So I've been going to Phoenix Landing to watch some of their matches in the morning on a given Sunday morning. There's a lot of nice nature around here. A lot of great universities like Harvard and MIT. I love non-taste Thai. The lychee sake is really good. The pad thai is to die for. Like sometimes, like I would go to Boston Calling, the music festival, and then I'd go to Border Cafe for lunch before I go over. I go to Shake Shack. I go to Nine Tastes. Then walk across the JFK Bridge to where the festival is at. So I don't know. I get here about once a month or so, but I love Cambridge too, and I can see why you love Cambridge. And, want to give back and pay forward to it.
Absolutely. Yep. And I agree with all of that. Fortunately, there are some of those that are going to be no longer after this fortunate pandemic, but every single one of them is and or has been a gem. And again, I think it just adds to the wonderful experience and ecosystem of living here.
Yeah, you also mentioned that you went to Wellesley. My former wife went there. Former wife Melanie, and still a good friend of mine. My friend Crystal and my friend Becky. I've gone to campus a bunch of times. It's really a magical place to visit. What was your experience being an undergrad there? What kind of academic and social stuff did you like best when you were an undergrad?
Yeah, well, it was a definitely a unique experience there. I benefited from so many of the most brilliant and caring professors I've ever met. It's a smaller school with regard to both colleges and universities, so that enables a lot of really great interaction. And I loved being near, well, I love being near an urban center like Cambridge and Boston, and that provided lots of different opportunities to me. And there's so much that goes into beyond that experience that I won't spend an hour talking about, but it was a very unique time there that I had.
Yeah, you've also spent time at MIT. You've got a master's at Northeastern, and you've thrown your hat into the ring to get a PhD as well. What are some unique things that you like about those two universities?
Yeah. So I spent a lot of time at MIT. When I was an undergrad, I went to Wellesley, as I said, but I managed to benefit from a lot of the community, a lot of the resources and activities that happened there. And it's a great place to be around. Let me just tell you, you can pop in anywhere at that place and learn something interesting. I don't know what it's like now with the pandemic, but when I was an undergrad there, you could pretty much pop into almost any course you wanted. You just asked to audit the course, listen in. It's great. And lots of different events that are happening. So I think that's how I benefited. Northeastern has really impressed me as a university. It wasn't as on my radar for whatever reason when I was applying as an undergrad, for example, but I went there for grad school as a master's student. And I was attracted to it because of the specific program. I'm nuts about data visualization, making data accessible to people, and they had just the program for that. So I went there and I was so impressed. I mean, they're so forward thinking. They're undergraduate. They're one of the only programs, if not the only one, that has this co-op program for every single undergrad, where each undergrad takes an extra year to actually have the experience of working at a real company or organization of some kind, and they graduate with a resume that's started, right? They have work experience. I mean, how amazing is that? Is an experience as a way to get credentials that really mean something very powerful as a recent graduate, and all the opportunities that it provides. So anyway, that's been my experience and how I've benefited from these different places. Again, I've been so lucky to learn so much from all this.
Wow, that's wonderful, and I think of that whole co-op ethos. That might be key, because I think a lot of colleges are overpriced, overrated. A lot more people are questioning whether a college education is worth it. And to give an undergrad, an opportunity for real life experience, might keep them ahead of the game, as things really shuffle themselves out, years ahead.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I started reading about some of your data visualization and, data-driven endeavors. And honestly, this Ivy League graduate, my eyes glazed over when I read about your Project's End.
Yeah.
What were some of your endeavors and exploits, regarding the companies that you founded or worked for?
Sure. Yeah. So basically, some of my experiences that I've done in the past. Let's see. So I guess I can kind of start from the beginning. I'll do a very short kind of overview here.
To make a long story longer.
Not too long, don't worry. But yeah, I study computer science and cognitive science at Wellesley because I'm interested in both the technical pieces as well as the more human pieces of constructing our world, but the things that will help folks here, right? Anyway, I did some research in cognitive neuroscience because I wasn't sure if I wanted to explore that further. Afterwards, I decided that I was very drawn to analytics, which I kind of learned during that experience in research. So I ended up as a data scientist at an IT company, then called GFI, and then Logic Now, tons of acquisition and such. But anyway, I was inspired by that, was a data scientist, became a product manager there, and really liked the idea of just building new tools that could help people do both practical and very important things. After that, I decided to found my own company called Project Zen, which makes a collaboration / task management tool. And part of the reason for doing that was I wanted to have the experience of creating a new company. I think that's an important thing to have experience with, but I also, just for my own technical, I guess, my own technical foundation, I just wanted to be a person who built an entire digital product from scratch. That's it. I mean, I did it. And it was one of these things that I guess it was kind of a bucket list thing, right? I built an entire piece of software by myself that anyone on the internet can use. And I learned so much technically from that. That was that story. Anyway, I got into local government. A friend was inspiring me with all of the ways that you can combine analytics and technology to really help people in an extremely tangible and concrete way in local government. And I was fascinated by it. That's part of what it first inspired me to run for city council, which I did after that. I did various programs. There was this awesome program provided by MIT that was in data economics and development policy, because I was interested in how you apply this analytics, economic theory to real problems, actual problems that people experience every day that you can look out your window in your own city and see. And so I wanted to figure out how to address those things. And so then went for city council. And that was me as a first-time candidate, knowing nothing about running a campaign, but I learned so much from the experience. And yeah, then I went to my master's program in data viz and worked at ClearGov, and here I am.
Oh, that's wonderful. I was reading about like some of your, things on bicycling, like people who don't have cars, people who kind of have unique perspectives, also conservation and sustainability. Like, what are some of your ideas to, help bicyclists interact with other motorists, or navigate the city well? Some of the things concern land around you.
Absolutely, yeah. So I think that transportation is something that is so socially, economically important to a city, to a country, to everybody, because transportation is how accessible a particular community or a particular set of resources is to people who can't necessarily live there, right? If you have really good transportation, it makes to a really much more accessible city, accessible place. It adds to economic equity. It makes it possible to work in this wonderful place that I call Cambridge, right? Anyway, it's also a huge factor in sustainability. So yeah, my thoughts on transportation are that it is very important to make sure that different modes of access to unique communities should be supported at the public level. We need good infrastructure for both bikes and people who need, for whatever reason, to drive in to the city, right? And this will not be solved by, I don't know, any kind of private company right now. It's the definition of why we have public infrastructure, right? No one else is going to do it. We need really great roads. We need really good bike infrastructure. We need to make sure that they work together. And again, this is public servants and employees need to work together to ensure that this infrastructure is safe, that it makes sense, that it's accessible to people that transport themselves in all different modes, right? So yeah, I think that both need investment, right? And so I think that encouraging more sustainable modes of transportation is important. But fundamentally, I think that equity, both today and also kind of looking forward into the future among different modes of transport, is also really important to consider. And I do think that more sustainable forms of transportation are the future, but as public servants, folks need to recognize that this is an evolving process. So.
Wow. I know that, there's, sadly, I've heard, bicyclists that, make right turns to New York City end up sadly losing their lives. Also, there's like a stereotype about bicyclists, however, where they believe, they kind of want all the privileges but not all the responsibilities. A lot of motorists think, they're in the way, just, clogging up the city, taking up lanes and stuff. I mean, how do you overcome people's objections and, get them to yes on top?
Yeah. Well, as someone who's lived in the Boston area for pretty much my entire life, I can tell you with complete certainty that there are both bad bikers and really bad drivers. It's just a reality. And the infrastructure that we build has to recognize that, right? And I do think that whether someone is a driver or they're a biker or they're a pedestrian or anything else, right? People need to be responsible, and people need to learn the rules of the road to keep themselves safe, to keep everybody else safe. So I think that everyone needs to be responsible, and it is the public, as in our government's responsibility, to build the infrastructure, to build the foundation, to make it easy to be responsible and easy to be safe and to understand those rules, right? So, and also people do need to be accountable. Bad drivers, they're accountable for that. And I think that every other person in any other mode of transportation should be accountable as well. But again, from the point of view of encouraging the best, most effective type of impact, I think that building and designing infrastructure really well can really help people easily be safe.
Well, thank you. I know, like, one of my political views is if I'm confused by something, I'm against it. I remember when Herman Cain ran for president, and he said, I would veto any bill that's more than 5 pages. I mean, that really resonated. It was just outrageous and wild, but yet I could totally see where he's coming from. And where I'm going with this is ranked choice voting. It's the same thing. I see how, like, I saw what the New York City Democrat primary were, which Eric Adams ultimately. It was just like really confusing just how the 11th place person will eliminate him, the 10th place person will eliminate him, and then I read that you came up with this thing called 5-star voting.
Yeah.
That was a little bit more simple, and it was honestly the first I heard of it when I was studying up on it. Could you elaborate on what 5-star voting is and how people could benefit from it, especially in a more local milieu?
Sure, absolutely. So first off, I think that policies, bills should probably be more accessible to the public. And that's what I'm passionate about. Making the underlying data, making the underlying message accessible, actually comprehensible to ordinary people, because that's what democracy is, right? Transparency and accessibility and actual ability by someone, an ordinary person who's got other responsibilities, to have a shot at understanding what's going on and to engage in some productive way, right? So yeah, to be fair though, I think it should be perfectly fine for a bill to be longer than 5 pages, okay? There's certain bills that are super complex, and having a lot of context in a bill, there's nothing wrong with that, as long as there's a part of the bill that summarizes it in an accessible way for people to be able to wrap their mind around it. So just put that out there. But I totally resonate with the underlying. I
could be persuaded to support a 6-page bill or 7.
Yeah, exactly. So anyway, I completely lost my train of thought there. Okay, going back to 5-star voting. Okay, completely agree with you on ranked choice voting. I think ranked choice voting is a big step up from traditional voting for many different reasons, right? A large part of those, well, most kind of obviously, and I think impactfully, if you have a large number of kind of similar but very popular candidates all running at the same time, and then another candidate who has less popular views but has fewer similar competitors, they actually manage to capture more votes because the other votes are split among the 3 similar ones, right? Anyway, it results in an outcome that is not what the majority of people would have wanted. So splitting the vote, huge problem. Ranked choice voting does a lot to address that. But as you said, it is completely, at least here in Cambridge, almost completely incomprehensible how this thing works. Honestly, I know only one person who can fully explain the system of actually figuring out who wins in this, because it requires actual relatively it requires a lot of thought and wrapping your mind around to actually get it right. It's a very complex way that we decide who wins, and that's bad in the terms of having a transparent process that most ordinary people can kind of get right. Again, I think it's better than traditional voting, but it has some ways to improve. 5-star voting is something that I was thinking about. I'm not sure if I'm the first person who's thought of it. Maybe someone else has, I don't know, but it tries to make it simpler, right? So the whole concept is that you evaluate each politician separately, out of 5 stars. So every single candidate you would be able to rate out of 5 stars. And that is the essence of it. And then the candidate who if you choose, say, to abstain from voting for a particular candidate, you might not know much about them. They get this default rating of 2.5 stars, right? Anyway, whichever candidate has the greatest average at the end wins, or whatever. In Cambridge, say the top 9 candidates win, right? So you just take the 9 candidates with the top rating, and that is so much better. It addresses the splitting the vote issue, and it's actually comprehensible to most people, and it's a very familiar type of interaction. We use 5-star ratings for a lot these days, and I think that people will be able to understand it and be able to work with it better. And I think that it's much better than traditional voting or the other methods. And I put it in my campaign because I believe that Cambridge should explore it. We're an innovative city. We can do it. We could at least look into whether it's possible. And wow, would it be cool if we were the first to implement a system like this and it spread or something? I mean, that could be amazing. I'll give full credit to the city of Cambridge. I don't even care, but I think there are better ways to doing things if you think about it a little bit differently. So.
Well, you'll be sure to earn the 5-star complete full endorsement of Fetty once they listen to the show, I'm sure.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Tell me more about what your life is going to be like ahead. Like you mentioned your PhD. What are some of the other really great, almost moonshotish things that you want to accomplish? Either both for Cambridge and life overall.
Sure. Well, I have lots of different ambitions nowadays. I am going to hopefully start the PhD soon in the fall. And so that's one of my ambitions. I will probably run for office again. I don't like to be coy about these things. I mean, come on. I love this city. But I do need a break from politics for a little moment. Anyone who's run for office, I think, would figure out why. But anyway, on that. So that's another ambition of mine. And I also have a lot of other personal projects that I'm hoping to pursue. I'm not really sure if like all or some of them will really pan out. So I'm hesitant to really talk about it that much. I can if you want, but they might not actually happen.
If you're comfortable doing it and yeah, you're comfortable with being broadcast all across Spotify, iTunes, YouTube, and Rumble, go for it.
Okay.
You want to hold off? Hold off.
Let's see. Well, I think for the sake of keeping at least a little bit of mystery slash mystique around me, I'll mystique aura. I'm usually not into that, but honestly, I don't like to create promises or suggest things that get people excited that I can't really act on. That stinks, right? And that's part of the reason why I kind of questioned at first whether politics would be right for me, because I come from the realm of product management, right? So basically being in charge of whether or not a new tech product works and has the features that you promised at the beginning. So the whole philosophy of being a product manager is under promise, over deliver. Always be extremely careful about what you promise people, because you will end up looking real bad if it doesn't pan out. And yeah, you might not be voted down as you would in politics, but
0 stars.
It feels bad if you're a PM and you promise something and you don't deliver. So that's kind of the philosophy that I've internalized through most of my career. So of course I hear that it's the opposite in politics. You promise all sorts of things. Anyway, I'm not in that habit. So that's another reason why I don't want to suggest things that may not happen. But perhaps soon I will.
That is wonderful. I mean, the under promise over deliver ethos definitely resonates. You know, I hate just promising stuff that I can't follow through on and just letting people down.
It is the worst.
Speaking of promises, I was up in like New Hampshire during presidential primary season. I came across this dude named Bourbon Supreme. He was like promising people free ponies.
Wow.
I don't know how he's going to fulfill that, you know, should he get elected, but, you know, I guess that's a case study in, you know, promising people stuff.
I mean, the guy seems super credible, so I don't know what you're talking about.
So, you know, you've talked about a lot of your, you know, personal, professional, political endeavors. What do you do to unwind? Like, what do you do to, like, you know, chill out, you know, do for fun, do with friends, you know, do on a given weekend?
Yeah. Actually, I have to relearn how to do that type of thing. I've been very busy recently, and chilling out is a skill unto itself. Some people don't realize that, but it is. Yeah, what to do unwind? Well, when I'm bad at unwinding, to be perfectly honest, I lay on my bed and stare at the ceiling and be utterly burned out. So yeah, that's really, really exciting. But when I'm good at unwinding, I go out and I do a lot of dancing in lots of local establishments in the Cambridge area. Listing a few: Phoenix Landing.
Yes.
You're right here for me.
You'll never walk alone.
Middlesex Lounge.
Yes.
I love you. Let's see. There are a bunch of others that I are in the habit of attending, but they enrich people's lives every Friday, Saturday, Thursday, possibly Tuesday night. And I salute them for that, because life is for living. And yeah, that's what I do to chill out.
That's wonderful. How can people get a hold of you, you know, to discuss your, you know, your future, your professional political endeavors?
Oh, people want to do that? That's great. Yeah, it's actually super easy to get in touch with me. If you Google my name, you'll most likely find most of my contact info. So ping me. I'll probably respond. Unless after saying this, tons of people, for whatever reason, want to ping me. You know, I'll see. I don't think it's very likely. But if you ping me, I'll most likely respond pretty quickly, and I'm willing to chat.
Wow. Thank you so much for coming on the Jimmy Daytona Show. I loved hearing your unique insights and your professional successes. You know, I'm pretty hardwired as a political scene myself, but you know, there's some stuff that I learned from you in terms of doing my due diligence for this podcast. So thank you so much for coming on the Jimmy Daytona Show. Guys, check Dana Bullister out. You know, she's a really cool gal. Really, really smart. Got a lot of great ideas worth exploring. Thank you for giving us a listen this day. And all the best to all of you.